Well, I'm back from my holiday. It seems like it's been a long time since I've been here. And today I get to start something new. I'm always excited when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I always want to use what I have at hand. So today I thought the box of squares that are 3 inches were going to be my starting point. And I've been going through piles of them because I have a lot. And I've been picking out some of the ones that are quite colorful. I've come back with a little bit of a tan. It's a lovely, lovely restful holiday I had. And um, So I've been picking out some of these little squares that are all kind of nice bright colors. Some of them have flowers on them, which are nice. And I'm not really picking anything in particular except they are not going to be dull. They're going to have some color to them. I have, of course, when you do scrappy things, you get a lot of things that are very um, gray, brownish, and they're not all that bright and brilliant. But I think I need something that's kind of bright and brilliant these days, so that's what I'm doing. And so I'm just going to make an economy block. Economy blocks are really easy, and all you have to do is just start out with a block that you want to start with. And in this case, I've got a 3-inch block. 3-inch block. And so an economy block is that you put um, add to each one of them to make a square that's a bit bigger, and then you add it again to make another square that's bigger. Here's one that I've tested out my sizes with. And you notice something else about this. I'm using a lot of solid colors. I've picked out of another bin that I have a variety of solid colors that I only have small pieces, small chunks of that fabric. Some of them are, strips left over from something. Some of them are already, pre-cuts that have chunks cut out of the corners. Some of them are just a small piece. So I'm going to try to use some of those small pieces up. And in order to use my already pre-cut 3 inches, which is not a standard size by any means, you have to figure out what you need to put around the outside. So the easiest thing to do is to show you what I do. So this is my finished economy block. As you see, I have squared it off, and I'm going to make lots of them to put together. But here's the process that I've used to make these blocks. First of all, I start with my 3-inch square. Now, you could start with any size that you want to make an economy block. The size could start with anything, 2 inches, 2.5, but you have to do a little bit of math in order to decide how big the pieces are going to be to go around it. So for my block, 3 inches, I can make these triangles 2 different ways based on the size of the fabric I have to use. And as I showed you, sometimes I'm using strips. Sometimes I've got all kinds of little pieces like this one. So I'm going to try to make use out of what I have without buying anything new. And all of those colors are pieces that are, some are a bit bigger than others, but they're generally small pieces. And I want to use them up because they're hard to find places to use little pieces. So in order to make these triangles to go on a 3-inch block, I can do them two ways. I can cut a square that is 2.5 inches. And that's great if I have jelly roll strips that are solids or whatever. And then all I need to do from my square of 2.5 inches is cut it once on the diagonal. And that piece is going to be the correct size to go on a 3-inch length here, a 3-inch side. So that's one way to make these little triangles using a 2.5-inch block. Or I can use a piece of fabric that's 3.5 inches, and I will cut it diagonally twice. And those pieces are the same size as these pieces. And so they could be sewed around the outside. And like I said, I'm trying to use what I've got. So that makes sense to me. Just keep going and finish that. So in this case, here is what I'm going to do to make my block. I'll sew these two to the sides. Then I usually press them, and then I sew these two to the opposite two sides. And when I'm done, I have a block. I always press the small square seam allowances to the outside. And I square them up because the little dog ears from the points get in my way when I sew the next part on. So here's step one. I have a 3-inch square. I cut the triangles that are going to go on the side. And when I finish, I have a square that is 4 inches. And I use my square up ruler and trim off those little dog ears that are there and make sure that I have a 4-inch square. It's always good to square them up at this step. So the next step is just going to be adding another layer of triangles to all 4 sides. In order to get that size, I have to measure this distance, which I know is 4 inches. So if I have something that's 4.5, it's going to give me the triangle that I need. So once again, it's the same thing. I'm going to have, for the next round, to make these triangles, a 3.5-inch square, I can cut it in diagonal. Or if I started with a 4.5-inch square, I could cut it into diagonal twice and get the pieces that are going to go on the outside edge. And I sew those on. And I sew those on the same way, pressed the seam allowances to the outside, and I trim them, and the trimmed block is going to be 5.5 inches when it's done. So it takes a bit of time because you are doing triangles all the time, but you can make very colorful blocks using this method, and you can use all kinds of small pieces. And like I said, if you wanted to start with a 4-inch square or a 5-inch square, the size of the triangles that you put on the outside are going to be bigger, of course, because you have to cover the edge. But you can make economy blocks in any size, and you can use up a whole lot of different fabrics because it is going to require quite a bit of cutting. So here's what I've completed so far. And it's taken me off and on doing laundry, cleaning up, sorting things. It's taken me a couple of afternoons to make those. And I like the fact that it's all free fabric, isn't it? It's all things that were leftovers, small bits. But I also like the fact that you could make this work in so many different ways. I'm going to put mine together in a 9 patch. So 9 of them together, and probably I will join them using Quilt As You Go method, because that way I also get to use pieces of fabric for the backing rather than requiring one big piece of fabric that is a full back, let's say. I think probably I will make this quilt into quite a big quilt because I enjoy this kind of slower method of making squares, but I also like to see the colorful display on my wall. And so I'm going to work away at this for a while. I'm not really in a hurry. I just need to think about what I want to do a little bit. So probably I will sew them together as a 9 patch and join the 9 patches with a Quilt As You Go method. But, in the next couple of weeks, I might decide to do something else with it. But that's my goal right now. So I've got some more things to cut and some more things to sew. I'm going to get on with my project. You'll have to come back and see what I make next time. And maybe you'll try one too. If you like this little video and you have found it useful, please think about subscribing and give me a thumbs up for a like if you found it interesting. I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.